Hello and welcome to our show Health and Wellness, Myths versus Facts. I'm Gargi Rawat. The primary difference between health and wellness is that health is the goal and wellness is the active process of achieving it. Our lives have become more sedentary than ever 1 year into the pandemic. Long working hours, sedentary lifestyle, poor food choices and lack of physical activity are all factors that contribute to a variety of lifestyle disorders including obesity, diabetes, hypertension and heart disease. Hypertension and type 2 diabetes are common comorbidities. The right knowledge is key to the prevention of both these conditions. If you're suffering from both conditions, the right knowledge can help you control it better. And we have experts to answer all your questions. Today we're joined by Dr. Abizar Manked, a consultant diabetologist, Saifi Hospital, Mumbai, and Dr. Nihar Mehta, consultant cardiologist, Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai. Thank you so much, doctors, for sparing your time for us for this program. And I'd like to start with you, Dr. Manked. Hypertension acts as a precursor to diabetes. So can you expand on what are the common causes of hypertension and diabetes and how are hypertension and diabetes linked to one another?
Yes, hello everyone. Yes, absolutely true. Hypertension does have a precursor to diabetes mellitus. Usually hypertension and diabetes coexist in the same patient and in population. Speaking about the causes of hypertension, I usually classify them in two broad categories as a modifiable risk factor and non-modifiable risk factors or non-modifiable causes. In the modifiable causes, you have smoking, alcohol, sedentary lifestyle, overweight, excessive salt intake, excessive sugar intake, stress, sleep apnea, which is very, very common in the young population, is also very, very common cause of hypertension. In the non-modifiable causes, I usually put your age. Aging is a always ongoing process. As you age, your arteries get stiffer and stiffer. You get hypertension, family history of hypertension, and genetic issues of hypertension, genetic problems of hypertension. Now, diabetes and hypertension are very closely linked to each other. Usually, both these diseases are silent killers and usually coexist together. And both these diseases called end organ damage. By end organ damage, I mean they can cause kidney problems, heart problems, eye problems, and all that. And if you see the causes of diabetes are also almost of tension. So that's why these two reasons for the patient.
All right, Dr. Mehta, now due to changed lifestyle during this COVID pandemic, the risk factors of hypertension have also actually increased for almost everyone across the board. So is the risk of hypertension different for males and females, and among them, who is at greater risk?
Yeah, that's first of all, thank you all very much for having me on the show. Hypertension, I think it really needs to be addressed much more seriously than it is in our country. Because the numbers are really surprising, and 1 out of 3 of all adults land up having high blood pressure. The risk factors in COVID have increased twofold because number one is that patients are not approaching doctors as much as they should be. The regular checkups are not happening. Therefore, high blood pressure is going undetected. It's called a silent killer because it does not really have any telltale signs of, you don't get telltale signs of high blood pressure. And secondly, the people who currently have blood pressure, they are not going for regular follow-ups. They are not getting their medicines adjusted. And therefore, the blood pressure is not being treated as well as it should be. So the pandemic has had a very negative impact on blood pressure, not to mention stress, which is a very important factor for blood pressure. So with all this in mind, BP should be checked more regularly. Men and women are both equally prone to blood pressure problems. But after menopause, the women's blood pressure issues are a bit equal to men. Before menopause, they are a little bit lower. But this does not mean that women are spared from blood pressure problems. Above the age of 30, men, women can all develop blood pressure problems. So it's important to be aware of this and to check your blood pressure at regular intervals.
All right, important for both men and women to continue, doing those checks. Dr. Manked, what goals of therapy can you recommend for patients with hypertension and diabetes? And what should be a normal blood pressure range for Indians?
Yeah, for the goals of blood pressure and hypertension, the first and foremost goal I would say control of both diabetes and blood pressure, very important. But to achieve this, for the targets I would say, First, I would tell a lifestyle. For lifestyle, I would just advise exercises. You can avoid elevators, staircases, you use stairs. For small, please avoid please walk around. Just walking 2 to 4 times a week goes a long way in when your blood pressure and diabetes. Secondly, diet plays a very, very important integral part. I tell all my patients usually avoid white salt. That is salt take, excessive refined sugar.
All right, I'd like to, ask Dr. Mehta the same question as well. And what goals do you recommend for patients with hypertension and diabetes, and what is normal for Indians?
So for blood pressure, it's very important that we start blood pressure treatment when the blood pressure goes above 140 systolic, which is the upper blood pressure, and below 90, above 90, which is diastolic, which is the lower blood pressure. So these are the Indian guidelines, and I was luckily a part of the guideline committee. And our guidelines say that 140 and 90, either of those two should be treated. We need to target a goal which is lower. For most people, around 130, below 130 and below 80 is a good control of blood pressure. In some subsets of people, we want to go even a bit lower to around 120. In terms of sugars, the sugar goal should be the HbA1c, which is the 3-month sugar, should be less than 7. And the fasting and the post-meal sugars should be below around 140 and below around 180, respectively. But it's very important that these goals be fine-tuned to your particular problem. In some patients, we allow a higher level, and some patients, we target a much tighter control.
All right. So, Dr. Mehta, what is white coat hypertension and masked hypertension? Which one is clinically significant, and how can one differentiate between these two?
Well, that's a very good question, because these are two entities which are really widely neglected, and people are not aware of what these two problems are. White coat hypertension basically is what the word or the term tells us. When a patient comes to the doctor's clinic, because of anxiety, because of the environment, because of the fact that they are with a doctor, the blood pressure comes higher. And when they get out of the clinic, when they go home and check their blood pressure, that's normal. Now, this white coat effect is sometimes to the tune of 20 millimeters of mercury, the upper one, and the lower one 10 millimeters of mercury. So let's say if your blood pressure is 120 by 80, which is normal, in the doctor's clinic, it could be as high as 140 or 150, and the lower one could be 90, 95. So it will lead to over-treatment. If you come to me and your blood pressure is 150 by 90 and I start you on medicines or increase your medicines, it'll unnecessarily cause lower blood pressure. So that is white coat effect, and it's seen in as many as 20% of people who are treated for blood pressure. The masked hypertension is a complete opposite of this. When you're with a doctor, the blood pressure is normal because your blood pressure is controlled and you're comfortable. But let's say you're going out and you're in a meeting, in a stressful environment, fighting with someone, smoking. Any of these things will push your blood pressure up. And this is masked because it's masked for the doctor. The doctor thinks, oh, every time I'm checking your BP, it's fine. But every time you're going out, the BP goes high, which the doctor remains unaware of. And how do we find out? By the damage that blood pressure creates. People will start getting kidney problems, eye problems, blockages in their vessels. So masked hypertension is more dangerous. And both these, white coat and masked hypertension, should be looked for every single patient of high blood pressure. The way we check it is by something called 24-hour ambulatory BP monitoring. And that is where 24 hours we check the blood pressure, and the patients get an entire reading which tells us at what time the blood pressure has been high or it's been low. And that is the best way to find out whether you have masked or white coat hypertension.
All right, Dr. Mankad, is it true diabetes and high blood pressure, if they coexist, there can be severe damage to the kidney?
Yes, it is very true, and especially as the diabetes and blood pressure usually coexist in the Indian population, same patient, and both are silent killers. And in the day-to-day and clinical practice, we are seeing lots of patients having kidney problems, and they sometimes go undetected. And sometimes these kidney problems can progress to a chronic stage, and they can lead to end-stage renal disease and patients requiring dialysis and at last kidney transplants, which adds to the expenditure and the quality of the life of the patient. But the good part of it is that if you are a hypertensive and a diabetic and you control both the parameters, keep it under good check by regular follow-ups, regular medications and following up with the doctor, you can keep that under control. You can keep kidney damage under control. And if you have if the kidney damage is started, and if you again control your blood pressure and diabetes, that kidney damage can be prevented to escalate further. And one more thing, diet also plays a very, very important part. There are a lot of dietary restrictions for a patient who has diabetes, has blood pressure and kidney complications. So diet, lifestyle and regular follow-ups with your doctor is very, very important for these patients.
All right. Now, Dr. Mehta, what is resistant hypertension and how does resistant hypertension occur? Can diabetes cause this type of hypertension?
So resistant hypertension is when, in spite of you being on at least 3 types of different blood pressure medications, if the blood pressure is still not controlled and the blood pressure stays high, then it's called resistant hypertension because you need more than 3 medicines to get your blood pressure controlled. There is another term called refractory hypertension, where even 5 medicines are not enough to control blood pressure. When someone has resistant or refractory hypertension, the number 1 cause is adherence. That means that patients either are not taking the tablets on time or they are taking tablets irregularly. So the most important thing for all blood pressure patients out there should be that they must take their medicines regularly, on time, without missing doses, because missing doses can lead to this resistant hypertension. Diabetes is one factor which does cause high blood pressure, and it can add to the entire chronic illness and the chronic metabolic component of blood pressure, and people tend to have higher blood pressure when they have diabetes. But when you have resistant hypertension, you also need to look at other factors like your kidneys, your adrenal glands, your steroid hormone levels, and so on and so forth, which can be contributory factors to the resistant hypertension.
All right, doctors, we will slip into a short break and return with more on how to manage your health. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Health and Wellness, and we're talking about managing diabetes and hypertension. Let's go across to the doctors. And Dr. Mankar, for people with diabetes, what should be the frequency of measuring blood pressure and how can they detect hypertension early? Also, are there certain symptoms that one can watch out for?
Yeah, for people suffering from diabetes, management for checking blood pressure, I would surely advise to check your blood pressure at least once in a month, and I would usually prefer doing it in the morning and evening and keep a chart of it and to follow up with a doctor. That's very, very important. And to detect hypertension, now there are a lot of devices available in the market, electronic devices, which are fairly accurate. To do ambulatory monitoring at home, you can check your blood pressure at home, and that's one way to detect early hypertension. And if the readings are high, we surely follow with the doctor. As I said before, the hypertension is a silent killer. There are no real good signs or symptoms which you may have to tell the patient is suffering from high blood pressure. So basically the common causes of high blood pressure which you may have are severe headache, sometimes nose bleeding, you may complain of dizziness, fatigue, chest pain, palpitations, congestion in the chest, sometimes ringing in the ears or heaviness in the ears. And if you are a diabetic and you have like symptoms of breathlessness, you start seeing edema in your swelling in your feet, you start seeing when you get up in the morning slightly swollen faces, so that could be the very early warning signs of blood pressure. So that is one dangerous thing about blood pressure. It gives you no warning signs or symptoms. So a regular checking at least once in a month, and I really advise you to do morning and evening BPs to keep it under check and to detect early hypertension and treat it.
All right, so that's important, to follow. Dr. Mehta, many people monitor their blood pressure at home, as we were just discussing now. How does home monitoring of blood pressure help people manage their hypertension?
Actually, I think I'm a very big proponent for home blood pressure. I think it's taking the blood pressure management into the hands of the patient. Number one, these machines are very accurate to a certain range. They are very easy to use. It's you don't need to have anybody to help you using it. It's one button and the blood pressure comes up. It improves the way you take the control of blood pressure into your own hands. So a person who uses the machine regularly also is more likely to take their medicines on time and be more adherent to their treatment. So home blood pressure should be it should be made more popular. And according to me, every patient who's on treatment for blood pressure should have one of these machines at home. Remember, these are not accurate to the single degree. They are supposed to give us a range of blood pressure. And when we use these machines twice a day and get a range of blood pressures over a few days, that's when you average the BP out, and that is what gives us a consolidated home blood pressure number. That is the number which we need to treat, and that's the number which is actually very, very accurate. Like we discussed earlier, it is more accurate than just taking the blood pressure in the doctor's clinic. So home blood pressure monitoring should be really made more popular, and every blood pressure patient should have a home blood pressure machine at home.
And any do's and don'ts, like you spoke about how it's better to monitor it in the morning. Anything else?
Yeah, so basically, blood pressure should be taken twice a day. Take it morning before your breakfast, and in the evening, maybe after dinner. Your blood pressure should not be the first blood pressure on that machine. So when you need to sit down, tie the cuff yourself, press the button. The first reading is usually wrong. You take it again after a minute, and that reduces the component which is related to anxiety. The second reading, whatever it is, should be noted down. Make a note, make a diary, so that your doctor can see the entire chart of blood pressure. A single reading is not important, but the entire trend is very, very important. Another piece of advice is not to overuse this machine. Once you've got a chart for 1 week, don't keep checking your BP again and again, because that itself can cause anxiety. So once you check your BP after that week, then maybe it should be checked every alternate week or every month based on how well your BP is controlled. But it should not be used on a day-to-day basis, because it will cause unnecessary anxiety.
All right, Dr. Mankar, now do a preeclampsia or gestational hypertension increase the risk of postpartum type 2 diabetes mellitus?
Yes, it does do increase the risk of preeclampsia or gestational hypertension. In today's era, we are seeing a lot of ladies getting pregnant in the elderly population. I would say after 30 or sometimes after 35. And that usually causes complications in diabetes in your pregnancy. Preeclampsia, eclampsia being one very common of them. And yes, studies and recent studies have proven that if you are suffering from preeclampsia or eclampsia during your pregnancy, there are very, very high chances that you may develop postpartum diabetes. One more indicator for developing postpartum diabetes is also mothers giving birth to high-weight babies. If you have a baby who's around more than 3-4 kgs and more, so that also is a very, very good indicator that you may suffer from postpartum diabetes in the near future. So yes, it's very true. Preeclampsia and gestational hypertension does carry the risk of postpartum diabetes in the future too.
Right. Dr. Mehta, does lifestyle modification is an integral part of any chronic disorder management? So can hypertension be managed with lifestyle modifications at the initial stages?
Very much so. Whenever someone comes with a high blood pressure, based on what the reading is, if it is very high, of course, we must start medications. But for most patients, when they have monitored their BP and it started to creep up above the normal levels, the first thing is that we should crack down on lifestyle measures. And there are two basic things which even Dr. Abizar has discussed earlier, but two things which I think are essential for in terms of lifestyle. Number one is your diet, and that would be for blood pressure purely is salt. We need to keep the excess salt in our diet down. Now, in India, we tend to consume close to 12 to 13 grams of salt a day, an average Indian. Whereas the recommendation says that you should be consuming only 4 to 6 grams of salt. So the excess salt in our diets, all the achars, papads, the namkeens, all the nashtas and the farsans that people have, all this extra salt in our diet should be kept to a bare minimum. That has a direct correlation with blood pressure. And if we keep the salt down, the blood pressure also gets better. And the second part of lifestyle is the walking or the cardio exercise that we do. To do some kind of aerobic exercise every day, 30 minutes, 6 days a week, is very, very recommended to make sure that your blood pressure stays down. Over 3 months, if we can maintain the lifestyle measures of diet and exercise, the blood pressure itself will come down, and you may avoid medications. If you're on medications, you can actually reduce the medicines which you're having. Very rarely, patients can actually reverse blood pressure also with a targeted lifestyle measures and targeted weight loss. So these things should be kept in mind, that it's not always permanent to be on medicines. We should have an effort to keep trying to reduce the medicines that we are on.
All right, important point about, reducing salt, because our Indian food usually has too much salt, and you spoke about, additions to our food like papad and pickles that we all have. Dr. Mankad, anything you'd like to add here? And of course, the impact that these last 2 years of COVID and the sedentary lifestyle that we spoke about have had on our health, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely true. And as we are seeing, we Indians, especially Asians, especially Indians, we are becoming the world capital of diabetes. I'm seeing patients as young as 18 years, 17 years getting diabetes and very high sugars. So, as I said before, first target, lifestyle and diet, that plays a long part in managing your health. So, yes, and stress, and as I said, modifiable risk factors and non-modifiable risk factors. There are modifiable risk factors which are fairly under our control. If kept under control, we can surely keep diabetes and blood pressure away from us. And if we have it, we can surely keep it under control, because these two diseases have no cure. You can only keep it under control. They are going to stay with you till you live, and so that's very important to control both these diseases by lifestyle, diet, and please have a regular follow-up with your doctors, and please don't stop medications on your own or without consulting a doctor. That's very important.
All right, well, important tips to keep ourselves healthy and keep diabetes and hypertension away. Thank you so much, doctors, for sparing your time and joining us on the program today. Thank you all for watching at home. Goodbye.